First year of trying was very filled with self. It was self-reliance, fear-filled, trying to figure it out on my own, not diving into resources. It was lonely. It was definitely.
Okay, guys, we have a very, very special guest this morning. We have Lindsay. If you have been in my community at all, you know like how special she is and what a big part of just this podcast and this community she is. So I am so thrilled to have her here to share her story with you. So Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It is a pleasure and it's surreal.
It is surreal. It's surreal
Yeah.
for me too.
Yes.
So start off by telling us a little bit about your fertility story. Give us all the details.
Well, you did say give you all the details.
Mhm.
I will get that. So I've been married to my husband for almost 6 years. We got married in October of 2019. And right before the sky fell, God was very gracious. Had no idea what was coming, but he allowed us to get in that special wedding day before the sky fell. So we were just content in our marriage, serving in our church, very plugged in. We lived nearby our family, and we were just we didn't enjoy 2020, of course, but we loved that we got to have a lot of concentrated alone time. And man, nothing's gonna refine you like marriage.
Yes.
Nothing refines you like marriage. So the Lord just gave us a lot of time to grow, get to know one another, learn things about ourselves. And it was a really fruitful time. And I had always known I wanted kids, but for the first 2.5 years of our marriage, I just didn't have the desire to try. I remember getting married and being like, wow, we could have a family. This is surreal. This could be our reality like next month. And it was exciting and surreal, but still, I just craved that time with Jeremiah to get to be with him, get to know him, not rush, and just enjoy this newlywed season. So it was almost supernatural. I woke up in November of 2024, not 2024, but let's see, I woke up 2.5 years ago essentially. And it's like the Lord flipped a switch in my heart. And the desire to have children was so strong. And it was just there. And I can't describe it other than it just being a supernatural urge. It was just like I'd always known I wanted kids, but God was like, this is when that was the beginning of the Lord putting us on a 2.5 year journey. And so I remember on Thanksgiving Day, bless my soul, I went to CVS with Jeremiah and we got ovulation strips. I'm like, I want to confirm that I'm ovulating. I feel like we need to start there if we're going to start trying. And then that's how our journey began. So it just was nonchalant, uh, last minute, just really crazy how God kind of did that. First year of trying was very filled with self. It was self-reliance, fear-filled, trying to figure it out on my own, not diving into resources. It was lonely. It was definitely lonely. And as we were at the beginning of the season, I'm not like blaring it to my friends and family. We're trying. My parents knew obviously, but it was just a lonely journey. And I learned so much about how I wasn't relying on the Lord. And it was hard. It was so much fear and control that I was wrestling with. It was devastating. And every month it would come and then my heart would break. And every month I would test and then my heart would break again and again and again. And it was hard for Jeremiah and it was hard for me. And we were going through things in our marriage and we were growing together and it was just another layer of pain. And the Lord just used that year to refine me and I had to come to the end of myself. And so year two, um, my goodness gracious, I was in some extremely toxic work environments, um, where I was struggling with chronic anxiety, chronic fatigue, chronic stress, and it completely tanked my hormones. And on top of working those two jobs, I started doing an extreme fasting program and I starved my hormones. It was not a healthy situation. So the Lord was gracious. He provided an out. I started my own business, which is part of how Tori and I met.
Yeah.
And the Lord he started to heal. Like the first year was used to refine. The second year was the beginning of how we started to heal physically. We had black mold in our home. We bought our home 6 months after getting married and didn't know it. terrifying. And what didn't come up during our home inspection. So for those of you that are looking to buy a house, like please, please, please take it seriously. Get your ducts checked for black mold. But we had black mold running rampant in our home, and we were able to get that remediated. And then through a beautiful, God could only do this sort of circumstance, we were able to um, get connected with a functional doctor who helped us remediate from the mold physically. And at that time, I felt like I was kind of on the brink of depression. And I would wake up in the morning and I would have to sleep for 2.5 hours on the couch. And it was like, I feel like I'm running on 10%. I don't know what's going on. And so the Lord revealed that it was mold. So Jeremiah and I both remediated, with the doctor, we remediated the mold from our bodies and from our home with the help of some specialists. So that was a layer, right? Peel that one layer off. The Lord helped us figure out the mold. Huge deal. We're talking with our functional health practitioner, and he's like, I firmly believe that this is what's been holding you guys back. I believe that this is why you guys have been struggling to get pregnant. I'm like, praise the Lord. Hopefully this is the beginning of the end, if you will. And so that was just, the Lord was continuing to teach me to relinquish fear in that season. So fast forward a few months, I was in church wrestling. I wanted that baby. I wanted that baby so badly. I wanted the season of infertility to end. And I'm sitting in the back of our church, our new church that the Lord had put us in. And he kind of whispered into my heart, I was bringing him glory by being barren in that season. And he called me to be childless in that moment. And it sounds like such a hopeless statement, but it wasn't. It was, oh my gosh, this is where the Lord wants me. I'm right where he wants me to be. And it didn't take away the desire, but the peace that came from knowing, the Lord knows my heart. He knows this desire, but I am in the umbrella of his protection, under the umbrella of his protection and within his will right now, brought me a lot of peace. And so the Lord was he was working. He was doing the dirty work in my heart and just helping me to overcome so many different things. And in that season, Jeremiah and I were going through different things in our marriage. I wasn't prioritizing him. I was prioritizing different ministries in our church, ministry to myself. And the Lord literally, kind of like a claw machine, picked us up out of our old church environment and dropped us into a different church environment where we were being poured into. We were growing. We started serving together, and we were able to work on us. So many different things going on in our heart, so many different things going on in our bodies with our health. And that was just another layer. But the Lord was working, and I can trace his hand of faithfulness, and I can see how he was working. So in our second year, I'm wrestling. I have more faith. The Lord has grown me and stretched me, but I'm wrestling again. I'm in that season of, God, when is this going to happen for me? I want it so badly. So many people in my world are pregnant. And it was actually right around the time Hurricane Helene hit Asheville. And Jeremiah and I were struggling. We had 2 cars that were out of commission. We were at the height of being stressed. It was and then trying for a baby, just so much going on. And the Lord called me to go serve for a week in Asheville. And I was like, all right, Lord, I'm going to go. This is the worst timing, but I feel called to go serve. So in the midst of my pain, in the midst of my hurt, in the midst of our stress, it was like, I got to get out of here. I got to go serve. So I'm on this trip, and it was the most impactful missions experience I've ever had. And I remember being there and just raw conversations, raw fellowship, raw talking with the Lord. And our second to last day of serving, there was this woman whom I didn't know her name at the time. Her name is Miss Kim. We were doing a mud out. There was a 16-year-old girl. Her room was filled with 15 inches of mud. We had to completely strip her bedroom. The Lord had put a log in front of her sliding glass door to her bedroom that I'm sure terrified her when it woke her up, but it protected her room and it protected herself from a mudslide. And so we spent hours, Miss Kim working over my shoulder, trying to get that room taken care of, get it worked out. So we're hours of sweating, hours of working. She's just silently working behind me, picking up tack strips and getting things for me that I'm not even asking for. Kind of like my guardian angel. It was just supernatural. Well, they had to leave. Their church had to leave. They had to go back to Raleigh. And she grabs me and she goes, Lindsay, the Lord has given you this this gift of leadership. And I know that you're using that for his glory. And she didn't know it at the time, but I was wrestling with that, wrestling with taking charge and trying to serve the Lord in that capacity. And so there were some insecurities, and the Lord used her to speak into my heart. And then she grabs me. Miss Kim grabs me on this porch, and she starts praying for God's blessing over Jeremiah and I. I've not spoken with her all day. And he is using her to make me feel so seen in such an intimate way, praying that God would bless us abundantly. And right before leaving on this trip, Tori, I was messaging you on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I was mad because you had said that the Lord has called you to be a mom. And I challenged you and I said, how do you know what God's plan is for my marriage and my life? How do you know
Mm-hmm.
that God called me to be a mom? And on that, you had challenged me to ask him. So I did. And then God sent me to Asheville. And while I was there, God used Miss Kim to confirm in my heart that I was called to be a mom. So I said, Miss Kim, your prayer, you have no idea what you just did. This is what my husband and I have been trying to do for 2 years. We've been wrestling. And she grabbed me again. I'm going to cry.
I know about to say I know some of this story and I'm
Uh,
crying. I'm like, ugh.
yeah. So she grabbed me again and she prayed that the Lord would open my womb. And she leaned back after praying over me. I'm weeping at this point, so raw. And she points to my belly and she goes, you're going to carry a baby and you're going to let me know when you do. And God's going to open your womb. And there was so much peace and confirmation that came after that beautiful moment, because the Lord told me to go serve, to get out of my own way, to do it in a season where I didn't feel like it. I was blown away. So I left with such a full heart. We had shared the gospel. We had grown in our walk with the Lord. We were ministering to the people on our team. And while I'm there trying to serve others, the Lord was like, I'm going to meet you where you are, and I'm going to answer your question. So we get home. That was a couple of months before November. Actually, I might be wrong. I don't know the timeline when Helene hit, but it runs together. It got home, and the Lord used you and my mom to kind of just in such gentle ways push me. Hey, I think you need to get your tubes checked out. Now, I should have gotten that checked out at the beginning of our journey, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was terrified of going to the doctor, having a procedure, terrified of it. Haven't been to the OB a lot throughout my life. I was like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to do this. The Lord taught me to surrender. And I ended up through you and through my mom, the Holy Spirit working. He was like, it's time to go. It's time to get checked out. So I go. Wasn't the greatest experience, but through submitting to the Lord's calling me to go do something that was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, we found out both of my tubes were blocked. Now, I was born with different body parts that were closed, like my tear ducts were closed when I was born, among other things. And so we don't know why my tubes were closed, but within 5 minutes of finding out that they were, the Lord opened them through a very, very painful procedure, but it was so worth it. And then from that moment on, I didn't know it, but we were on a 6-month clock at that point. In 6 months, he was going to bring to fruition what we've been working for. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, well, my husband and I were so taken aback. It felt like we were starting back at square one, and it was trepidatious, but it was exciting. It was like, wow, I feel like we've just got a new lease here. Mm-hmm. We're starting from ground one. Like, we've learned so much these past few years, but the Lord's just kind of putting us back into this place. So I was like, all right, Lord. Well, at that point, I was like, the Lord had just put it on my heart. I discovered you through Spotify. I found your podcast. Golly, it was a breath of fresh air discovering your platform, Tori, because it was bite-sized. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't an hour and a half of information. It was you being real and raw, talking about the Lord, which that's hard enough to find in the fertility industry, finding someone who knows the Lord and is giving you content that you're able to digest easily. It was just incredible. So I'm binging your podcast episodes. Like, I am running through these things, learning so much. And I realized I had neglected some foundations for a long time, and I had overcomplicated my fertility. And so I was like, Jeremiah, we've got to do HTMA. I feel like I know Tori at this point. Like, you are so real on your podcast. You're just so, like, we're sitting down having coffee. I know everybody else feels this way. It is such a special, it feels like we have a relationship with you when we're listening. It really does. And I was like, we have to do this. He was like, all right, let's make it happen. We were tight financially at the time, and the Lord provided a way. And so we ended up diving into HTMA. and learning that all the things that we had gone through had depleted our mineral levels. Me,
Hmm.
I was severely depleted in three specific areas. So I don't know that my body was able to conceive. I'd never conceived before. I'd never had a positive. And so we ended up doing Vicon, which was the customized formula that
Hmm.
Tori came up with on her packages. And right around the 3.5 month mark, this is just cool. This is just another layer. Um, my cycles had gotten a little funky, and I was like, you know what? Tori told me it's going to get a little weird before it evens out. And man, she was right, because I remember my period was coming. Like, ladies, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. All the symptoms, all the emotional roller coaster, all the PMS, all of it. And it was 6:30 in the morning on my husband's birthday on May 23rd. And I had one more pregnancy test. And I was like, I'm going to go take it. It's a 2-minute rapid test. I need to take it so that I can move on. Typically, when I take a pregnancy test, and I don't take them super often because I've learned to protect my heart, but typically my period starts 2 hours later. So I was like, let's take it so that my body can do what it's got to do, right? Well, my husband wanders back into the bedroom. I'm in the bathroom, and I'm taking the test. And I didn't tell him I was taking the test. And I'm just like, all right, well, the Lord brought him in here. I didn't realize it at the time. I was like, well, okay, he's here, because I'm typically private with that. And I set the test on the counter, and I said, can you pray over our day? I just need you to commit this day to the Lord. I'm so in my head. I'm so in my feels. I need to get past this. So he prays over my day. And I said, all right, babe, I'm going to go throw the test away, and then we're going to celebrate your birthday. And then I go and I grab it, and it says yes with a little positive sign. And we're in awe. We are shocked. We've never seen that before. We've never had a line. Like, we have never experienced that. And so it was there. It was there, and it was real, and we were blown away. And we're shaking, we're crying, we are holding each other, and we're in awe. And like any sane couple would do, no, nothing's open at 6:30 near our home. We brought my pee to CVS and we got the truck, and when they opened at 7 on the dot, we run in those doors, we get another test, and we sit in the truck and we wait. And it was positive. And we're just in awe. And we're 2.5 years of fighting for this dream, and the Lord refining us, and he brought it to fruition. And today I'm 16 weeks pregnant. And
It's so
God,
crazy.
he writes the best stories. He just writes the best stories. So that is a very, very long-winded answer to, like, what's your story, Lindsay?
Yeah, I know, but it's so good. And I feel like it's so perfectly that episode I have about like what if the wait is preparation. And it's so easy to for anything in our lives, especially with fertility. It's like we get so zoned in on ourselves, like me, me, me. What about me? What about what I want? And
Yep.
when we just kind of, get back to the word and the foundation of what our life is built on, like what does God have for me?
Yep.
And especially like you talking about, you know, how do you know what God's plan for me is? And I'm like, well, just ask him, like talk to him, ask him to confirm it because he will. And it's like, okay, now that he has confirmed it, I can move forward. I can serve. I can open up my mind to what he has for me in this season because I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be
Yep.
7 months or 7 years or what it's going to be, but God will continue to grow you. And even like that, you're talking about like you and Jeremiah becoming closer. It's like, he can do so much with that waiting period, even though it's not fun. We're not trying to wait, but if we can surrender it to the Lord, he can do so much with it. Like for you to go on this trip, this mission trip, and some strange lady, which have you told Miss Kim you're pregnant? You're saying like,
I went to find her on Facebook, and I can't find her now.
oh
So
no.
I'm actually going to do that when we hop off here, because I want to see if I can locate her.
What if she was just an angel?
You know what? She might have been. She
Yeah.
might, but
You know,
it
but
was a God.
even that's so cool to have like so you're like, okay, I'm gonna step outside of what I am focused on. I'm going to go on this mission trip and serve other people, and God still meet you there. Like, I just feel like that is such an incredible story, such an incredible story. And even, you know, Lindsay didn't even mention this, but Lindsay is another one of she's one of these women that, like, when I say that she had done everything, like, she had the black mold. The time that we started working together, she was working on getting fillings removed from her mouth. We
Not,
did the
not.
Vicon, we did the parasite, like, we literally did everything.
Yeah.
And so it's just cool and just what a better space you are in for pregnancy now that you have, that you have done all those things. And so I like to remind women of that too. It's like now is a time, especially if you're listening to this podcast, you're someone who wants to get pregnant naturally. And so getting pregnant naturally goes back to foundational health and work. Like you even had said that you would skip those foundations. It goes back to foundational health and how when you do that, when you become pregnant, you're in such a healthier space for pregnancy, which I feel like is the most beautiful thing. So it's like now you're geared up to have this really healthy, beautiful pregnancy. And it's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
Glad you brought, I completely forgot. So I spent like 30 seconds on this. I had a failed root canal that had sealed an infection in my mouth for 2 years. I had multiple fillings. I had severe gum inflammation. And
Mhm.
I'm not that girly that goes to the dentist every 6 months. And I didn't prioritize that. So the Lord brought us, like it was just his time. I felt like he picked us up in the claw machine again and plopped us down at the right dentist. And like 2 months before we got our positive, I started working with these guys. We pulled the root canal, we took care of the fillings, we cleaned, we helped take care of the inflammation in my mouth. And I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that was a large piece of the puzzle.
Yes, I
So
completely agree.
it was a large piece of the puzzle. People don't talk about how your mouth and your dental health affects your fertility, because it is your fertility journey. It's not your infertility journey, as you've taught us.
Yes.
And like even for your husband, like big deal, really big deal, because your baby, when you guys get pregnant, and you are,
Hmm.
your baby's going to pull from the calcium in your mouth
Hmm.
second trimester. So you have to take care of it. This is part of your preconception care routine. So that was just, yeah, I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, and it's really, again, I talk about how our fertility is foundational health, but this is another reason why, like, there's nothing like wrong with Clomid. People always ask me, like, well, should I try Clomid? And I'm like, there's nothing wrong if you want to try that, but we modern medicine and just us typically we keep fertility and hormones over here in this little bucket by itself, but it's not like it's so many other things like, and that's why I say all the time, like, look at your number one symptom, and if you want to improve your fertility, look at your number one symptom. So like for Lindsay had this infected root canal, so you'd be like, oh, that has nothing to do with her fertility, but yes it did, because that infection in her mouth was basically pulling minerals and prioritizing that infection. So, and again, if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know that I talk about like our body's prioritizing keeping you safe. So for in Lindsay's case, her body is trying to protect her from this mold, keep her safe from this mold and this infection in her mouth. So that is the priority. Ovulation and pregnancy is not the priority when we have those things going on. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsay, but were you a three lows pattern or a four lows pattern on your
I was
HTMA?
reload.
Three lows. So Lindsay was what is called three lows, which is like one step above the most depleted you can be. And I even tell women that have this pattern, hey, like we're looking at 6 months of like support. Now I've seen people get pregnant in less time than that, but typically I like to set that standard. We got 6 months of work to do because we really have to refill those stores. I mean, if you just imagine, like four big buckets for your macro minerals and they're like almost completely empty. Like we have to fill them back up and then we can get pregnant. And so that was the case for Lindsay. So she had remediated from the mold, worked on the infection in her mouth, went back to foundations. I remember us talking about walking a lot. And she was like, I'm walking, I'm getting my steps in. And again, we did the Vicon for her. So it was really, we worked on a lot of things that didn't seem fertility related. And
Yeah.
even just like her story, like the mission, working in missions and working on her relationship with Jeremiah, all that's fertility related too.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to use that as an example of like, hey, like if you feel like you're Lindsay and you're someone who has tried all the things, but if they are all fertility related, like you've tried Clomid and IUI and prenatals, like look outside of quote unquote fertility. Look at and even Lindsay talked about a toxic work environment. I want you to look at your work environment, look at your dental health, look at, anything, your number one symptom. What is your number one symptom right now? So that was kind of like a tangent there, but just you're such a good example of that. Such a good example of that.
And when
So
you said Lindsay was doing all the things, I want to be so clear to the audience here. I was far from perfect. Consistency for me is 3 or 4 days of consistency. So I would have steak for breakfast maybe 2 or 3 times a week. That's a lot of protein in the morning. I would walk 3 or 4 times a week for 30 minutes to 40 minutes. And I wasn't, you don't have to be perfect. And I carried that weight of perfectionism for the majority of our journey. And I would dog myself at the end of the week. I'm like, you didn't walk like 2 more times. You were supposed to walk 2 more times, or you were supposed to have this much protein in the morning. And it did not take perfection to fix my hormones. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't take perfection. In fact, it takes grace for yourself. I would say grace for
Yes.
yourself is way more important than doing something 5 to 7 days out of the week, because that's not realistic. Life's different. We're hormonal beings. We have to
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
Always.
Yes.
Always. So tell me, so Lindsay, you had kind of touched on this. So Lindsay did reach out to me on Instagram and basically like asked me why I was saying what I was saying, which is so good. It's so good because, something I was fearful of is when I first started, I was like, okay, like I've got to make sure people know I can't guarantee a pregnancy and make sure like I'm not setting the expectation too high. And that just didn't sit right with me. Like it just wasn't, I was like, this does not feel good. Like I don't want women to, you're already sitting in this place of like, I don't even know if I can get pregnant. And it didn't feel right to me to be like, yeah, you may not, but let's try this. I felt like God was calling me to encourage and like speak his truth over them, not the world, like more of him, less of the world. And so I really stepped into that knowing that someone might challenge me on that. Like Lindsay Combs might drop in my DMs and say, what you talking about? You can't promise that to everyone. And she's right. Like I can't promise that to everyone. I can only do what I've been called to do, which is to encourage you and make you believe in your ability to get pregnant. And for those of you listening, it's like it's your job to talk to God and let him confirm it for you, just like Lindsay did. Lindsay went on a mission trip and had a total stranger pray over her and tell her that, her womb was going to be open. And like, what a beautiful thing. So I just encourage you to pray about it and ask God to confirm that for you because he will. He absolutely will.
And you have to have the faith to ask, because it's a scary question because you're worried about the answer.
Hmm.
Ask it, because he's going to answer, and it might not be right away, but he will.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's how me and Lindsay met. So we formed this relationship and we decided to do HTMA together. So Lindsay, tell us kind of what made you think like, okay, HTMA is the right next step for us. This is the right choice, especially since you had tried so many other things.
We had I was always looking for the next thing to check, I think. And so when I found you on Spotify and began listening to your podcast and listening to HTMA testimonials, I was so intrigued because I'd never heard of it.
Mhm.
And I didn't know how to check my mineral levels. I had no idea how to check that. I had no idea that the two chronically stressful jobs that I was working back to back, one of them was in a mold infested environment as well. So the mold started way back when. I had no idea how that could affect my body's ability to feel safe so that it could conceive. So you did such a good job of educating me as a listener, as a follower, on the importance of HTMA and why it's different and how it's an incredible investment in your health in general. Because I feel like fertility for women is a marker of your overall health,
Hmm.
and cycle is a marker of your overall health. And I had some work that needed to be done. I had a short luteal phase. I had a regular bleeding, like I had a regular cycle, but a short luteal and a regular bleeding on that schedule. So it was just, listening to your testimonials and your podcast was really powerful, because I could hear these different women going, this is where I was, this is what HTMA did for me, this is how it affected my body. And I just, click on your website, do a deep dive. I love all the information that's on there. It's just really easy to dive into. And so I was able to figure out HTMA was something that we've not pursued this yet. And I felt, at the end of the day, I felt like the Lord just put it on my heart. He really did. I was just like, we need to check our minerals. We've never checked this. Like, I don't know how to check this. We've got to go with Tori. And it was a blessing. It's been great. And I did do it with my husband. So it wasn't just me. I opted to have his minerals checked too, because he's 50% of the equation. Like,
Amen.
I carry the weight of our fertility for our family when we are half of the equation. We are half of the equation. So him being on, he was, Jeremiah is so gracious. He was on board, completely on board to seek answers. And obviously it's scary. And he was like, you didn't want to carry the weight of what if, obviously, but he was like, of course, like, you're doing all of this work. I can, of course, like, let's test me as well. And so having a spouse that was on board was an incredible thing. And then I had some answers revealed. Like you say, Tori, you're never going to walk away from HTMA without some answers. And that is,
Hmm. Yes. And and I feel like for the men too, like typically women are the ones doing all the research, doing all the deep dives, going down the rabbit holes, listening to the podcast, all the things. And this is yet another thing I love about HTMA is it's something easy your husband can do. He doesn't have to go to the clinic and go in a room with a cup and,
Yeah.
magazines in this really awkward situation that he doesn't want to do. You can just cut some of his hair off and put it in an envelope and we can get him some answers. So I feel like if you have a husband that is kind of reluctant to do the testing and kind of get involved, this is something so easy he can do. I mean, he could literally shave the hair off his armpit and be done. No, it's
It is literally that simple.
yes. And so it's a very easy way to get him tested, but that is so good because it is so important to get both couples tested. I really highly encourage anyone listening to this to get your husband tested as well. Because like Lindsay said, this is a family that you're building together and you are only 50% of the equation. So
Yeah.
even if you're someone Lindsay could have been like, well, I have a short luteal phase, so it's quote unquote my fault. But that it's no one's fault and everybody needs to be optimized. Jeremiah was living in the black mold just like Lindsay was. So that means his body was prioritizing that as well. And he was minerally depleted too. So we need both sides of the story, even if one person, so if your husband has low numbers or you have an irregular cycle or endometriosis or anything that you think makes you the only one that needs to be targeted, you're not. Both people need to do the testing and get some answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
What would you say your experience was like versus with HTMA versus the other things you had tried?
Well, first of all, I had you. I had the coolest cheerleader in my corner
Mhm.
reminding me to have faith and reminding me that this is possible and that there's a means to an end and that there's a goal and we're going to get there. And you were constantly reminding me that it's going to happen. And when you surround yourself with people that are pumping that into you, you're going to start to believe it. And I did. And you challenged me to start telling myself that, hey, you're going to get pregnant. And so I felt so silly. But I affirmations in my bedroom in front of my mirror, and I would say them and I would look at myself when I said them. And I was like, Lord, I know that I can't make this happen. This has to be you, but I'm acknowledging the mind body connection here and I'm committing this to you, these steps to you. So, Lord, I believe that my body's fertile. You've made me perfect. I'm beautiful in your sight. You've made me to be a mom. I believe that you're going to make it happen in your timing. And I started doing that right before we got our positive too. So you were constantly pouring into me in an emotional side of the fertility space. And so you were also holding me accountable. Like we had different checkpoints and you were able to go, hey Lindsay, where are we at with this? All right, you need to work on that gently, pushing me on to pulling me up would be a better way to put it. Getting out of my own way and encouraging me to do the right thing. But HTMA, just how you formulated it with your business, provides a lot of emotional support. That was one of the biggest cornerstones for me and my heart and my mind. And then I think my body started responding to that. But the process was easy. It didn't take super long. Like getting off of calls with you was always, you just feel so light, feel so encouraged, feel so ready to move on to the next month worth of homework, if you will. And it wasn't daunting. It was simple. And in fact, even I remember at our second month call, you were like, all right, you're doing too much. We're going to pull back a little bit. And doing less did so much more for my body. And
Yes.
it was very contradictory to how I'd been treating my fertility. So you were like, less is more. Let's give yourself some grace. We're going to backtrack. We're going to start, take this off of your plate for the month. And yeah, just HTMA was absolutely like the final most important piece that Jeremiah and I needed on our journey.
Yeah, that's not good. Y'all just know that Lindsay is like my biggest fan and totally biased. Like she talks about how much encouraging I did for her, but me and Lindsay ended up working together. She does some social media marketing and strategy and stuff. So she really came in and helped me with my business. I guess after we'd been working together like 3 or 4 months, I was
Yeah.
like, "Help me, Lindsay, help me." So then we just went back and forth from like, "Okay, Lindsay, I'm going to fall apart today, and you're going to encourage me, and then you can fall apart tomorrow,
Yep.
and I'll encourage you."
We got it figured out.
So if you see the cute graphics, the new updated podcast art, if you saw anything in my business in the last 6 months, it's because Lindsay was helping me and keeping me on track. So.
No, you
Um,
are, girl. I was just there to guide you.
Yeah. But this is another beautiful thing of like the way God makes things work because Lindsay was talking about this toxic work environment she was in. and, left that. She already had some clients she was working with, but we started working together too. And it's like, I feel like this is the way God brought us together. Like, I got to bless Lindsay and Lindsay got to bless me, and we're like all for us to do things for God's glory. So it's just really, really cool to see that happen.
Yeah.
So one thing we didn't touch on, or we did kind of touch on, but I want to, before we wrap up, I want to tell us timelines again. So you had been trying for 2.5 years, never been pregnant, and
Yeah.
then how long did it take you to get pregnant from the time we started working together?
So we started working together about a month and a half or so after I had my tubes open. So that
Mhm.
was at about 4.5, 5 months at that point before we would get our positive. And I remember it, obviously it takes the HTMA comes in the mail after a couple weeks, you send it off. It's the Vicon ends up coming. And so it's a very streamlined process, but it takes a little bit of patience because I'm over
Yeah.
here like, let's get me pregnant now. My tubes are open. And it was about 4.5 months after my tubes were open. And I knew my body still wasn't ready yet, if that makes sense. I knew we
Mhm.
had like the final roadblock wasn't removed. I just knew in my heart that it wasn't. And so the Lord had just impressed that HTMA is what we needed to do. So I had been on Vicon and we'd had answers for at least 3 months. And right around that time, I'd finished my second month of the Vicon formula. My teeth had been taken care of. The inflammation was gone.
Mhm.
We had removed the root canal that was infected. And so, I feel like we just removed some chronic stress from my body and remineralized and rebalanced. And it all happened at the same time. Like the culmination of all the things like there were 15 things going on at once. And
Right.
it overwhelming because it's like, hey, I'm going to take my one supplement this morning for my fertility. Ladies, I'm a supplement junkie. To be able to wake up in the morning and take one thing, and knowing that it had everything my body needed to remineralize, holy cow. Just the peace that comes with that and the ease, and it was just incredible. So yeah, it was about 3 months. I believe it was right around your 3 month mark, Tori, when
Yeah.
women you that they see they're positive, and that's what happened with me.
Yes, that's so cool. I love hearing those numbers because you guys know me, like I'm tactical, tangible. I just love real answers. I guess I can't think of like real numbers, real answers. And so there was a time when I wanted to have like a percentage, like, okay, what percentage of my clients are becoming pregnant? But that became really hard for me to track in a what felt like a good way because I didn't know, if people were doing the work, if they were falling off. Some people were signing up, but I never heard from them. And, so it was hard for me to be like, okay, I can't really tell you what percentage of people are getting pregnant because I don't know who's sticking to the plan, who's not sticking to the plan. I've got different offers. It got messy, but I did find that the one thing I could track with certainty was how quickly people were getting pregnant and like what that average was. So, I've got lots of different numbers, but like 3 seems to be the sweet spot. It seems to be the number I see over and over and over again. And that's why all my programs, the Conception Connection and HTMA, are built on 90-day cycles because it just seems to be the magic sweet spot. And so again, Lindsay was what we called the 3 lows pattern. And I said, hey, this is probably going to take 6 months for us to really refill that store. But again, she had laid a lot of foundational work already. She was already did the black mold, already was working on the teeth, and then adding in walking. And then when we got her HTMA and the Vicon that was made just for her, 3 months later she was pregnant. So it's really cool to see. I feel like sometimes we want to discount the natural things because they seem too easy, but it's like if you just like stick to the plan and trust the process, it just works. And it's just really cool to see that continue to happen. So that's just so beautiful. Lindsay, to wrap up, what is one thing you would like to share with women listening to this podcast? I feel like you've dropped so much gold already, but like if you could leave them with one like really good piece of encouragement or tip or whatever it may be, what would be the thing you'd want to share with them today?
Oh gosh, Tori, you told me to come up with one thing, and I was sitting the Lord to show me what to put here, and He gave me four. So
Okay, let's do 4.
I'm gonna be really concise. First of all, ladies, this is your season of preparation. I want you to believe that. God does not make mistakes ever. He doesn't sleep on the job.
Mhm.
So it might feel like your dream is so out of reach, but I promise you that it's not. Ephesians 6:10 reminds us that you can grow in the Lord and the power of His might. And if that's my verse for my fertility journey. I grew in the Lord and in His strength because I didn't have it. We don't have strength outside of Christ. So he sustained me, he grew me, and he brought me to Tori. And it was because of his power and his might that we're here and that we have this beautiful little baby boy on the way. I want you guys to know that it might feel like every cycle, it feels like the clock is ticking, right? It feels like you have to take control now or it's going to be too late. That's not how this journey works. The Lord's in control, and that's hard because that requires surrender from you. But surrender from you does not mean that you have to let go of this desire to be a mom. It means that you let go of the control and you trust the Lord with the biggest desire of your heart. So I wish that someone had told me that sooner than later. I wish that I had believed that and lived by that. So just know that the Lord is in control. And I'm not going to leave you with a tangible piece of advice because I want your soul to be tended to here. And I want that to be your takeaway. It needs to be that the Lord is in control and you're surrendering to his plan, knowing that his timing is perfect and that he has given you this desire and that you have every right to go to him and to ask him to confirm that you're going to be a mom. Have the faith. You won't regret it. He's on the move.
That is so, so good, Lindsay. So good. I even feel like the Lord has been working that in me lately too, like in my personal life and through this podcast. Like I love the tangible, tactical, like that is, I love a checklist. That is why my program is built on a checklist. And I feel like God has been working in me to say, like, that is good. Like these are good things and this is a good system. But like it surrender's the first step. Like don't forget surrender and don't forget like believing that God will do it. Even like one of the most recent girls that was in the conception connection that got pregnant, one of the things she said was that she just had to believe, she just made a change to believe that God would do it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're, because like you said, one thing that you said at the beginning that was so good was like I came to the end of myself. And so that's what we do is we do it in our own striving and our own like quote unquote power. But like Lindsay said, like we don't like God is our strength. And so then we come to the end of ourselves and then we're like, okay, now that I've tried everything, now I'll surrender it to you. But it really should be the other way around that we start with surrender and we start with believing that God can do the things he's called us to and praying God's will, like not just Lord, let me be pregnant, but like Lord, your way, not mine, and you're still good even if it doesn't work on my timeline. And so I think that is like the perfect way to end this episode because that is the piece that's typically missing. And even like you were saying, like a lot of the women I see are perfectionists and control freaks, and and me too. I get it.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part is releasing control. But that's like we are children of God, and that is what we are called to do. And that is just a huge healing piece of the puzzle. So that was perfectly, perfectly said, Lindsay. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story with us and giving us all the encouragement. This was just a beautiful episode, and I'm so honored to get to do it with you.
Honored to be a part of your team, Tori. Honored to be a part of the your success stories.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Lindsay, thank you for being here.
Of course.